Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to this online seminar. What I'm going to do, inshallah, in the next hour is go through some points, some issues, some probably obstacles, challenges that students of knowledge might face when embarking upon the journey of studying sacred knowledge. What to study, what to avoid, and some practical issues, inshallah, even from my own journey. I'm still a student. I'm still studying, alhamdulillah. These couple of quotes is from Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, a great Imam of the Sunnah, great scholar, muhaddith, faqih of Islam. He mentioned that a man should not take the position of authority. Here he mentioned mufti, but an authority in Islam, teaching or giving fatwa or, guiding people, right? Unless he or she has 5 traits. Number one, he should have niyyah, intention, right? What is the purpose of my study? What do I want to achieve in my study? Do I want to become a speaker or a lecturer? Or do I want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So niyyah, inshallah, we'll come back to it, is really, really important. Number 2, he should have forbearance, right? Patience, right? Number 3, he should be competent, have the mental, intellectual aptitude. And number 4, should be independent, self-sufficient, right? We'll come back to that, inshallah. It's really, really important point. And these kind of like characteristics are universal, really. Number 5, he should have awareness of people, right? And this is more specifically, I guess, in relation to ifta or fatwa. One of the kind of principles that scholars mention when it comes to giving or issuing fatwa is, ma'rifatun nas, is being aware of people, their context, the situation, the circumstance that a person finds himself or herself in. So number 1, intention. Really, really important. Why are we studying? Why do I want to study, right? In particular, the sacred sciences, in particular, Islam, fiqh, aqidah, tafsir, usul, the various disciplines, subjects that we find in the Islamic sciences. Why am I studying? The Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, that our actions are judged by the intention. The intention is everything in Islam, right? As scholars have mentioned, intention is the first thing that you should consider, you should think about before embarking upon anything really in life, in particular studying sacred knowledge. The hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, warning us that we should not study knowledge to become known as scholars. We should not study knowledge to argue with scholars. We should not study knowledge to show off. I am a intelligent person, or I am a person who has knowledge. That's not the purpose of knowledge. The purpose of knowledge is for us to become closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The purpose of knowledge is worship. Gaining knowledge, the act of even gaining knowledge, is worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So intention is really, really key, especially in our day and age. Social media, we have social media influencers. There is a kind of perception among people. I want to study so I can, as an example, I want to start lecturing at universities. I want to start lecturing, in mosques, right? I want people to come to me for wisdom. I want people to come to me for advice, right? And although the byproduct of gaining knowledge, like the byproduct of gaining knowledge, or any sort of knowledge, that, yeah, you will impart that knowledge. You should impart that knowledge. And you will be called to give advice. You will be invited to teach and lecture. But that's the kind of byproduct of it, right? That's not the sole purpose. That's not the main purpose of studying knowledge. The main purpose of knowledge is for us to attain the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is to for us to better ourselves. Is for us to become better human beings, for us to become more diligent human beings, for us to become more mindful human being, mindful of the limits of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So, every single day we have to check our intention. Every single day we have to check our intention, morning and also evening, right? I see, again, we cannot judge someone's intention, right? By mentioning this to kind of be cautious and be aware of some of the obstacles or the challenge that even the shayateen or shaitan will place in front of us. And we have our own weaknesses as human beings, right? We are, the most perfect, imperfect creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have wants and needs and desires. We want to be recognized. We want to be validated. We want to be seen in public, right? There's a kind of notion of leaving a legacy now. People talk about legacy. I think that can be very problematic, right? Study knowledge or do X, Y, and Z and leave a legacy. Our legacy is through our a'mal. Our legacy is what we leave behind in terms of good deeds. Our legacy is our children, our family. Our legacy is the sadaqah al-jariyah. And obviously one of the ways is, learning knowledge and imparting that knowledge. So, always before embarking, I sit down with people who already have gone through a process, right? We'll come to this point more, have a mentor, right? Have a guide, have a murshid, if you like, right? It's really, really important. When I, began to study, we didn't have many people who were speaking English, born and brought up in the Western countries, in the UK, for example. Right now, alhamdulillah, we have a large number of, folks who have gone abroad or studied in this country and accumulated experience and knowledge that they can, guide folks. So just to kind of come back to the main point, intention is really, really key. Why am I studying this knowledge? Why do I want to spend? Because it's not easy learning knowledge. We'll come to it, right? It's not easy learning knowledge. It's not easy to learn, fiqh and aqidah and all the ulum. It's more difficult than many of the other secular sciences. In fact, probably all of the secular sciences. People assume that it's really easy, but it's not easy. If you want to become competent, right? If you want to really understand the ulum, understand the intricacies of the various subjects that our scholars developed, and understand the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the sunnah of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it's not easy, right? It's more difficult than many other subjects. There is a misconception that people have, right? So, when you have a clear intention, if you have a intention that you want to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hopefully make the path of learning easy for you, because that is our guide towards Jannah. Whoever, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, man sadaka tariqan yaltasimu, the Prophet said, whoever goes on a path seeking knowledge, right, seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make that path easy for that person. Right? Easy does not mean you will stay in 5-star hotels and travel in first class. No, it doesn't mean that, because any student will tell you they had to go through different struggles. And inshallah, I will give you from my personal and other colleagues of my students from all over the world that struggle that they went through, they had to go through. So intention really key. Character, right? um, be diligent in what you are doing, right? Be resilient. You have to be resilient, right? Being, patient, right? Memorizing the Quran, for example, learning a text, right? It is not easy. You have to have sabr, you have to have patience, you have to have resilience. Now, there are, courses now, weekend courses where you study whole Bukhari, for example, right? But that's not the way classical traditional knowledge is, right? No, how can you study a book, 6 books in a weekend, right? How can you study a tafsir, Ibn Kathir, for example, in 1 year? How can you study these, magnum opuses, right? These books authored by scholars who took decades to author, decades to write, right? They had to go back and forth. They had to think. They had to learn. They had to gather. They had to scrutinize their own writing. They spent arduous nights and days traveling, sacrificing, sleep, play, family time to author, right? That is why these scholars like Imam al-Shafi, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Abu Hanifa, Ibn Taymiyyah, Al-Ghazali, and others, right? Every time we mention them, say, Rahimahumullah, right? May Allah SWT have mercy upon them, because they they are giants because they sacrificed. They had character, right? They had resilience. They had patience, and this is what Islam wants from us. If you have the right, have the right intention, have the right focus, right? Have guidance from other people, right? Always seek guidance from other people, right? Don't assume or think that you know everything. No matter what you have learned and gained, there's someone else more knowledgeable than you. There's someone else more experienced than you. There's someone else who has more wisdom. So always have people around you, and character, resilience. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, لا تكونوا إمعة, but do not be a people without will or characterless people, right? In أحسن الناس أحسنتم. That if you are good, right? If you are good, if you go that, if people are good, if people go that way, you go that way. If people do good, you do good, right? وإن أساءوا أسأتم, right? But if people go that way, if people do bad, you do bad. ولكن وطنوا أنفسكم, right? Be resilient, be firm, be diligent, right? Be focused in what you are doing, right? So this is about building character. Right? It's really, really important. Having the patience. Number 3, competency, right? Right. Yeah, you have to have, competency, the capacity to learn. And intelligence, there's a lot of talk about intelligence, even from a psychological perspective. How do we define intelligence? Some people, they're very, in academia, they're very intelligent, right? They've got this library intelligence, right? They can write an article or a journal paper very, very quickly. They can, work out. Some people are mathematically very, very good, right? But in other areas, they may not be so good. So what you have to do, again, with a mentor, right? Find what you are good at. You can always improve. You can always increase your awareness, your capacity, your competency, and whatnot, your skills, your techniques, right? You can do that. But you have to understand your own personality. You have to understand what you want. Not everyone, right? Not everyone can sit down and memorize the text. Not everyone can sit down and learn the sacred knowledge. Not everyone can become scholars. Really, when I talk about scholars, the high caliber of scholars, right? Some people just want, they want to do other things, and that is fine. You have to love what you are doing, right? You have to fall in love with some people love mathematics, and all their life they study mathematics. Some people, they love, studying IT, for example. They love that. And some people, they love studying Arabic. They become masters in the Arabic language. Some people like the ulum, right? So you have to have the competency, the capacity, but you have to know your own self. You have to understand what you can be good at, right? Number four, resources, right? And we'll come to that in more detail, inshallah. You have to have the right resources, right? The institutions, the scholars, right? How do you find the resources and whatnot? We'll discuss that, inshallah. And number five is about, Imam Ahmed said, ma'rifatun nas, right? Having awareness of the context. I believe this is more referring to when, a person in fatwa, but you have to understand the context that you are living. You have to understand the people that you are engaging. Now, Imam Shafi, he mentioned six characteristics or six traits. He said, أخي لن تنال العلم إلا بستة سأنبيك عن تأويلها وتفصيلها ببيان. My dear brother or sister, right? You will not obtain knowledge except until you achieve these three characteristics, or you've got these six things, sorry, right? Now I'll clarify them, what they are. Number one, ذكاء وحرص واجتهاد وبلغة وصحبة أستاذ وطول زمان, right? Intelligence, as I mentioned, right? When Allah subhanahu, this is really important, like the way we may kind of understand intelligence in our society, right? It can differ from one society, one time, not another time. But someone has to have, the intellectual prowess to study, usul al-fiqh, as an example. It's not something like you can study in a weekend or 2 weekend courses, right? There's a lot of thinking behind it. There are a lot of understanding that needs to be had, behind it. So a person should, have that intelligence, develop intelligence, right? Harrison, be eager to learn, as I mentioned, right? Be eager to learn, love learning, and be eager to learn, because Shaitan will come and whisper into our ears, go and play and don't go and do this, go watch a movie, whatever, right? But if you don't have that eagerness, the love for knowledge, it said that Imam Nawawi, for example, and other scholars like him. Imam Nawawi, he passed away in his, I think 42, 41, around that age. But look at the enormous legacy that he left behind, the amounts of books that he left behind. The 40 hadith or 42 hadith that are read by, everyone, any Muslim who wants to study Islam or embark upon a journey of knowledge, right? Studies the 40 hadith or 42 hadith of Imam Nawawi, Riyadh al-Salihin, right? And he books on usul and fiqh. Amazing. It was said that his friends and people around him, children, young, when he was 10, 11, they would go out and play. He would stay at home. You go to the madrasa, he would go and study. And this is the characteristic of anyone in any profession who wants to achieve something big. You read the stories or biographies or listen to the biographies of many of these famous athletes. Michael Jordan, for example, in basketball, or Ronaldo, right? In football, right? They dedicate, right, so much of their time. They wake up early in the morning, right? And they dedicate their time in practicing, while others, they relax or they start playing, right? But the people who excel, they are eager to excel. People who excel, they have this extra kind of motivation, right? They have this extra motivation, right? And because they have, they put in the hard work. The number three, ijtihad, diligence, and putting in the effort, right? You cannot become a scholar. You cannot become a knowledgeable person, right? You cannot understand anything really just by studying something, in the weekends, right? What I'm saying is that, of course, I'm not saying that weekend study is not important, We'll come to that because there are people will take different journeys, right? But you have to put the effort in, the hard work. You have to graft in one sense, right? You cannot become someone knowledgeable or learn something overnight, right? You have to put the effort in. This is within Islam, even outside Islam. The athletes, the footballers, as I mentioned, right? How much time a day do they practice, right? Those many of these athletes, they have a within the kind of the coach that they work with, they have a set time. But those who excel more, right? They put in extra hours, right? They have a goal, they have the intention, they have a focus, they want to achieve something. This is for the dunya, by the way, right? And they achieve great things from a dunyawi perspective, right? But we're talking about Islam. We're talking about the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're talking about knowledge of the sunnah of a Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We should be exerting, this is a reminder to myself, right? Exerting more effort, right? Struggling more in the pursuit of sacred knowledge. And then resources. Bulgha. In a way, right, you can say subsistence also, right? That many of our scholars of the past, even now, they had to sacrifice their dunya, right? To become really, scholar, they had to sacrifice the dunya, the luxuries of the dunya, right? Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahumullah, is mentioned that, at the age of 80, right, he would go from house to house, from one point to another point, and he would collect hadith. And people were saying, "Ya Imam, ila mata, until when?" Right? You've become the Imam of the Sunnah. The stance that he took, and you have to be brave, right? To become a scholar, right? You have to be brave, right? The stance that he took, he became known, right, of the Imam of Ahl Sunnah. The scholars, they mentioned that in 2 occasions in our history, if those kind of individuals did not take the stance, then there will be kind of Islam, would be broken in one sense, right? And the first stance was the stance of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. The first stance was the stance of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu when people said they will not pay the zakat. He said, no, this is not on my watch. He said, this is not on my watch. He took a stance, right? Imagine if he were, even Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, he said, let's be easy. But he said, no, I will not allow this to happen on my watch. This is a pillar of Islam. And another stance, the scholars mentioned, the stance taken by Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. He was persecuted because of the stance he had on the understanding of the Quran. So you have to, work hard, be brave also, right? Number 5, guidance from a teacher. As I mentioned, really, really important. وَصُحْبَةُ أُسْتَاذٍ. It's really important that you find people who are genuine, sincere, authentic, right? They want the best for you. They really want the best for you. They don't want you to become the student so they can say, I have students. No, that's not the intention, right? But they really want this. You can feel that they want good for you, right? They have the empathy. They have that intelligence, right? Like they can guide you from A to Z, right? And don't just accompany one teacher, but accompany multiple teachers, right? People who have the understanding, the right understanding, people who can guide you in your efforts to study. وَطُولُ زَمَانٍ, and long time. As I said, in order to really grasp the fundamentals of knowledge, to become a scholar, you need time. A lot of the programs in the UK, in other parts of the world, you know, in Medina, Al-Azhar, in Jordan, where I studied, right, around, you know, the foundational years, you study about probably 6, 7, 8 years. You learn the alat. You don't become a scholar. Now I see people like while they are studying in, you know, some universities or institutions, they come back to the UK, London, they go on the speakers circuit. They issue fatwa. Akhi, hold up, right? Study, right? Study and then impart. If you want to, you know, teach, we'll come to that, inshallah. Teach it close, you know, with your family. Teach your spouse, teach your brothers, your sisters, your friends, you know, don't try to become, you know, establish this institution, establish this or that, and say you're a sheikh and whatnot, right? It takes a lot of time, right? The way, I mean, this is all subjective, obviously. What I would say is that someone who kind of has studied, you know, 7, 8 years in a program, and there's some programs are longer, but you know, around 7, 8 years, full time, by the way, full time, right? You come back, you study, revise a further 10, 15 years. This is from, you know, from my own mistakes, right? I would say study for another 10, 15 years. Study, teach it. That's fine, teach, right? But don't try to become this celebrity. Don't try to become go on the speaker circuit, right? That the teaching will enable you to, you know, retention is really, really important, right? But don't try to become this celebrity speaker. Don't try to go on the speaker circuit, right? My advice to people is that after you do a 7, 8 year program, 10 years minimum, 15 years ideally, right? Yeah, you know, get a job, whatever, right? And learn, revise, teach, right? But without having that motivation to become public. You may have to do certain things public, that's fine, but don't have that motivation. Going back to the first point, have the right intention, right? You know, alhamdulillah, I've been blessed to study many years. I still, after my kind of you know, foundational learning the tools, basic tools, even then I would say I'm still learning, right? You know, learning does not stop. When a person assumes or believes that he or she has mastered everything, know that that person has not mastered anything, because, you know, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal at the age of 80 was still learning, and many other scholars, they kept on learning, I remember some of my teachers, you know, old, you'll find them in the library, right? You know, I remember one teacher of mine is old, and he had this strange kind of way of like reading. You get like a magnifying glass, and he'd go like this in the books, right? Ajib. He didn't want to wear glasses. So always, you know, always learn. You're, you know, when a scholar assumes that he or she knows everything and has studied, that's a problem, right? Right. Now let's get into some issues, practical issues, right? Practical issues. Now, where do I study? How do I study, and where to start, right? Do I learn the Arabic language, right? Now, this is really, and I've been thinking about this for a long time, to be honest. And I've taught Arabic. I've taught Arabic at, you know, GCSE level in secondary school. I've taught Arabic, you know, independently. And obviously I studied Arabic myself in London, in the UK, as well as abroad, alhamdulillah, right? And it's been something that for a while that I've been thinking about, right? Is whether, you know, should I learn Arabic or not? And the way I say is, let's go into some details, right? Again, what is your intention? Right? I remember when I kind of like, I initially, when I wanted to study Arabic or Islam, like I said, look, I'll go abroad for 1 year and just learn Arabic and a bit of Arabic just to understand Islam a little bit more, right? And then 1 year led to another year, and then in the rest of history, right? I didn't kind of like, my intention was, okay, I'm going to study a 8-year program and then become an imam or a teacher or whatever. But like that was not my intention. I was like, at that time, I didn't have a mentor. We didn't have many guides at all, right? That we could learn from the experiences, even some of the mistakes, right? So thinking about this for a number of years, if that's why it's really important. Like if you're 18, if you finish school, definitely you should finish school. At least finish, also finish your A levels, college, and then we'll come back to that point, right? And then like find a mentor or mentors. Really, really important. That want good for you. I've seen, unfortunately, some folks who they, they mentor people, but like they don't give them the right advice, right? Because they may have not gone through the different experiences to offer the right advice, right? So if you want to go into in-depth study of the Sharia, tafsir, usul al-fiqh, right? Your intention is to study a 8-10 year program, right? Then learning Arabic is fundamental, because Arabic is the key that you open the door with, to the other disciplines, whether it be usul al-fiqh and tafsir or hadith studies, aqidah, Arabic is really, really key, right? However, right, if your intention is to study the fardul ain, become a da'i, someone who wants to kind of have a good foundation of Islam, right? And study in even part-time. We'll come to that inshallah in a moment. Study part-time for a number of years. But you're not interested in becoming a scholar in that sense, right? And you don't have the time. You're working full-time, right? You're working full-time. I mean, alhamdulillah, what's amazing now, there are programs now, weekend program, evening programs, right? Which is really, really good, I think, for people, professional people who study, people who are working, right? The problem I have with some of those kind of programs is that students who kind of like enroll at, 3-year courses part-time, 1 day a week courses, right? So, I see that people assume that they become scholars, assume they become authority in Islam, that they have an opinion, right? Yes, everyone has an opinion, but don't assume the seat of, iftar, right? That even after like some of my teachers, world class, world renowned teachers, right? They don't even have the name Mufti front of the names. I mean, obviously the iftar program that are there, they're more cultural. No, alhamdulillah, I studied iftar. I don't call myself Mufti. Now you have people who study 1-year course and part time, and they call themselves Muftis. This is really right. So people who want to study, go long-term study, full-time and stuff, right? Go into that, they want to become experts, right? Dedicate most of the adult life in learning, then your Arabic is fundamental. But those who have a different aim and purpose, right? That they want to become da'i, they want to teach basics. I don't think you need to learn Arabic language. I think sometimes students waste learning the Arabic language. What I would advise is that learn Arabic, the Quranic Arabic, rather than the more conversational Arabic. It's really important. And now there are courses out there, which are really, really good actually, right? Right. They teach you the words in the Quran, right? So when you recite the Quran, you actually know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, right? So if you're a professional, right, and your objective is not to study 8-10 years, really go into it. I don't advise people to learn Arabic, because you can have a good, really strong foundation, right, in Islam by studying English, for example, or in other language, right? There are many programs in English that you can actually get a really good, solid foundation without learning the Arabic language. But focus on the courses that they teach Quranic Arabic, right? But that's really, really important. And inshallah, hopefully you'll have questions as we go into it, right? Number two, marriage. This is like, there's a book written by a scholar, a famous scholar, and he made a list of scholars of the past, right, who said, who preferred knowledge over marriage. علماء الزهد الذين آثروا, right, scholars who preferred knowledge over marriage, right? And for example, Imam Nawawi didn't get married, right? A famous scholar of Islam didn't get married, and many other scholars, right? Probably because of circumstance, wallahu alam, but also because they wanted to dedicate their life. They didn't have time. Well, like, I've seen people, they have so much love for for knowledge. Dunya becomes irrelevant for them, right? All the other things, become insignificant for them, right? So, and that is why they became reference point, marji'iyah in Islam, right? It doesn't mean, I'm not saying that scholars did not get married. Scholars who got married, they also became reference point. But just to kind of touch upon that, the dedication that it requires sometimes to become scholars, right? Now you study Bukhari, and other books, as I mentioned, in a weekend, and they all studied Bukhari. No, you have not studied Bukhari. Bukhari took how many years to compile, right? What, 20 years? And then you have the shuruhat, Fath al-Bari, for example, Fath al-Bari and other commentaries, decades. People say, I've studied it in 1 year. And people, I remember when I was growing up, and I used to kind of like, when the English-speaking folks were going to Syria and Egypt and Jordan and other places, they would come back. They said, I have ijazah in this of the 6 books, I have ijazah in that book, and they studied 6 years. And I'm like, I was mesmerized. Wow, subhanallah. And then when I studied, I was like, hang on, they probably have ijazah in the 6th book and this reading of it. Because how can you study these books? And like, when I say study, like cover to cover properly, right, in that time. So there's this marketing, I think we have to avoid, right, to a certain extent, right? So okay, coming back, marriage, right? Now, marriage is important in Islam. It's a sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the maqasid of Islam, if you like, right? It is not obligatory to marry, obviously, but it is highly recommended, right? It's a sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. An-nikahu sunnati, faman raghiba an sunnati falaysa minni. So, in fact, you'll find some people saying it's actually obligatory to marry, right? But generally, sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. If someone does not get married, that person will not be sinful, right? The question is, students who are already married, how do they study? People who have not married, right? And they want to really go in depth in the ulum, should they get married or not, right? Now, that one has to look at the financial circumstance, right? The context, the circumstance that they live in, because the financial circumstance is really, really important, right? And also their own self. Some people they have to get married because, of the situation that they're in, the personal situation, right? Some people, they can wait. So depend on the individual. That's why I always go back to have a mentor. It's really, really important, brother. I can't emphasize this enough. Have a sincere, authentic, genuine, a mentor who really understands and can guide you and advise you, right? I know, when I was even studying, I know some brothers and sisters who were couples, they got married and they studied together. They went abroad or they studied in this country, and they studied together, alhamdulillah, right? I teach a program and there's a couple who are studying this, and they're abroad. They're in Yemen studying. They're studying another program with me. SubhanAllah, amazing, right? Amazing to see. Brilliant, right? So that's one thing. But not everyone can do that, right? If you're 18, 19, right? If you're starting, right? If you want to go in depth, then advice from people, myself, Wait until you have a foundation. You study a long-term program and then get married. Because yes, marriage brings responsibilities, duties, responsibilities. It can be a distraction, right? Not everyone can get married and study, right? It can be a distraction. That's why scholars, they avoided marriage until they studied a good, solid program. Now, if you can get married and do that, ahlan wa sahlan. But it does become very, very difficult, right? Now, people who are professional who are married, right? Now, there are some people, it's rare, I found that they leave the profession, they have savings and they go abroad, the whole family study. But again, that's the exception, not the rule. Again, couples need to help each other, right? Couple need to help each other, right? As I said, alhamdulillah, we live in a society, a world now, there are programs, right? There are programs, I'll come to it, even online programs, right? There are weekend evening programs. So like there's access to knowledge. There's access to knowledge, right? Well, hopefully we'll discuss that. And there's other thing I really need to touch up on, and there's a lot of discussions now, and in particular, the growth of certain ideologies within the Muslim community, right? There are people who complain, in particular, some sisters, female, they complain, they don't have access to knowledge or scholars, and they say, oh, no, but I'm saying, okay, they have extra kind of hurdles than males, apart from obviously the biological aspects of women, right? The other kind of obstacles are the same as any other as a male would have, right? There's institutions, there's universities, there's institutions in the UK, abroad, that allow females to study, right? Yes, there are, the sisters have unique obstacles, right? Unique obstacles relating to their own kind of makeup and biology, but there is always a way, there's always a will, right? And that requires family support, obviously. That requires understanding of the family and whatnot, right? So that hopefully with the discussion we can talk about, right? University program. Do I study at a university, right? Or do I study with traditionally with scholars, right? Enroll at an institution or a program, right? Now there, like, for example, do I go to Al Azhar or Medina or other universities in this country and also abroad, Darul Uloom, for example, right? You have to choose. You have to kind of, again, have a mentor. Look at, okay, what you want to gain out of the program, right? And then choose. And when I was studying in Jordan, I studied at a university, but I also studied privately with teachers. In fact, sometimes we benefit more from studying traditionally with our shuyukh than at the university, right? And I think many people would say that. Many of my colleagues and friends would say that, right? But we want to have the best of both worlds. So that there are good programs, university program, that's good. We want to study, right? But also focus on studying traditionally, texts, books with scholars. That's the ladda, the sweetness of studying. You won't find, when you study with a scholar, the teacher, whether it be online or a text or a program, right? When the university, it's very, very different, very, very different, right? Now, online or face to face, again, face to face is always the best. You cannot replace face to face physical learning, especially the suhbah wa suhbat ustad, as Imam Shafi said, accompanying a teacher, right? We, when I was in Jordan, like, we had after university, we have a number of teachers, right? One kind of like was focused on more tafsir, teaching tafsir. One more on kind of creed and the usul al-din, and others in Arabic language and whatnot. And there's one or two, they would come and stay with us. Like literally stay with, have breakfast with us. And we, sit down with them. Always for females, that's very sometimes difficult, right? But if there are female scholars, that can be also done. So online, there are good programs online now, right? But always online, like physical, face-to-face should be given priority, right? Now you'll find, okay, who do I study? Which scholars do I study, right? There are different trends. There are different trends. I've been fortunate in the institutions that I've studied in, is that we had scholars and teachers from various different backgrounds. Alhamdulillah, right? Whether it be in Jordan or in this country, we had teachers from many different backgrounds, many different trends, right? And many different methodologies, if you like, in da'wah. And that enabled us, or at least me, alhamdulillah, not to be rigid, not to have this kind of sectarian, approach, right? Because we had teachers from very many different backgrounds, right? And there are institutions and programs like that. Because Islam is one. Yes, there are differences here and there, but when you discuss and when you learn from different teachers, you open your mind. You're not rigid in that. As long as obviously they're promoting the sunnah, as long as they're not promoting bid'ah and whatnot, right? Then, study abroad or your local town or local city. You see, the methodology of the scholars of the past was that they would study in the local area first. They would exhaust, right? They would exhaust the resources of their local town, local area. So they will study with the teachers first there, and then they will go extend outside, right? And then they all travel abroad. So this is the best approach. Alhamdulillah, in London, where I live, in the UK, for example, in other countries, there are scholars, there are teachers who are teaching, right? Studying abroad, it's not necessarily something that before it was something that we had to do, right? We didn't have institutions and universities and whatnot, right? Now we have so many different programs now, good programs actually, really good programs, and scholars of the highest caliber living among us, right? So always exhaust your local teachers, right? And then the advantage of going abroad in a Arabic speaking country is that you free up time. That's the advantage, right? That's the main advantage. Arabic language, well, even some universities, they don't teach Arabic, good Arabic. In one of the, I was surprised that when I went, and the teacher, because we had Arab students studying, right? And the Arab students, like some of them, they could not understand Fusha Arabic. The teacher, he would go in kind of Ammiya. And then I didn't understand Ammiya. So I asked him, what are you doing? He said, I'm here to learn Arabic. I'm here to learn the ulum in the classical Arabic, in the Quranic Arabic, right? He goes, well, some of the students may not understand. So point is, yes, you go abroad, you free up time. Yes, there's more access to kind of more opportunities. But there are so many opportunities in the UK and other countries. Exhaust the resources of your local town first, and then go abroad if you need to go abroad, right? Okay. What to study, right? You study traditional subjects again, right? If you want to become a scholar, you go long term, right? Study Arabic, you study fiqh, you study aqidah, you study alat. You study, introductory books first, right? The kind of like gives you overview of the subject. Really, really important, right? Gives you the overview, the evolution of a particular field, right? Really, really important, right? Study a madhab. When it comes to fiqh and usul, study a madhab. Don't, like, there are some institutions, they study fiqh al-muqaran in first year. Right? No, that's not a good approach in my opinion. I study a madhab first, the usul of the madhab, right? You don't have to become the mujtahid of the madhab, but study the basic usul of the madhab, the fiqh of the madhab, and then you can branch out to other madhabs and study, fiqh al-muqaran and whatnot. That's really important. Like you study, the basics of that madhab, right? Become kind of at least aware, proficient in that madhab. What were the fundamental subjects in Arabic language, aqidah, usul al-fiqh, tafsir, hadith, mustalah hadith, ulum al-hadith, right? Tarikh is really, really important. All these subjects are really ulum al-Quran, for example, right? There are key books. So, like in each madhab, there are key books. The first thing I would say, study the introductory books. And each madhab, they have the introductory books. But also study books that give you a general evolution of that subject, right? Really, really important, right? Memorization, right? If you like from a young age, start memorizing the Quran as much as you can. Right? Get your children to memorize the Quran as much as they can, because memorization, opens up your intellectual horizons, right? And there's been studies that has been done, right? So memorize the Quran. If you cannot, right, memorize the key verses pertaining to, for example, certain topics, right? Memorize obviously for your own kind of salah and recitation, at least, one or two juz, really, really important, right? Juz amma, for example. Hadith, right? Start off with memorizing 40 hadith, for example. Really, really 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi, 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi. Some hadith pertaining to ahkam, right? But again, if you don't want to, right, it doesn't mean you will not learn Islam properly. But for people who really want to go into it, study, right? Even studies, memorize some text. I remember, when we had before. Now we have everything on app on our phones, right? Before we had these small, books. I still have it, but I don't want to get rid of them, right? The small books, mutun books, right? Text in Arabic language, Ajrumiya, for example, and Mustalah Hadith and Aqidah and Tafsir and so many, right? And would memorize. And that really helped, because you can carry those books, right? And all the mutun are there, because scholars, they would write the kind of overview of the subject in poetry form, right? Amazing. And students will memorize it, and then teacher will explain it, and the shuruhat will be based on that. Again, it's not something that you have to do, but it's really, really helpful, right? Methodology, right? If you're in a program, follow the program of that institution, right? Follow the program of that university. It's really, really important that you do that, right? I remember when we were studying, we had these cassettes. Remember the cassette years, right? Before even CDs, cassette years, and they were, now it's all online, right? But before, my whole entire house or room was filled with cassettes, because you had, scholars were teaching people, recording like Bukhari and Usul al-Fiqh, hundreds of hours, right? And I remember when I was studying at an institution, a madrasa, that seminary, and we lived there, and there's few of us who would get those cassettes, right, outside of the class hours, and would kind of listen and buy the book and take notes. And so that was amazing. I remember, many of the books that we studied outside of the class, right, through that. And then if we didn't understand something, obviously the teachers were there and would ask the teacher, right? So, online, recorded classes, they're not they should not be substitutes with, studying with a teacher, but they're really, really helpful now. The access to knowledge is there, right? Again, aims and objectives. What do you want to do, right? You want to become a scholar? right? Obviously, the intention is not to become a scholar for the sake of it, but you want to really go into it, right? There's the methodology that you follow. Go the Arabic language. Go, enroll at an institution that has a long-term program, full-time program. If not, right, the part-time, you're professional. You want to get the fardul ain, the basic, become a daya, a teacher in a particular area, right? There are programs that are out there that you can you can study. But just to kind of end, always, brothers and sisters, right? Find a mentor. Some of the kind of obstacles that you will find, and hopefully we can discuss, sacrifice for anything in life, you have to make sacrifice. And if you want to learn knowledge, you have to make the sacrifice. I remember when I was studying in Jordan, for example, right? And there were students from all over the world, from the European countries, from Kosovo, from Bosnia, from Malaysia and other countries. And some of them, they didn't have the financial support, right? I see them struggling, struggling, for the basic necessities. Subhanallah. I remember one brother, subhanallah, he came initially beginning of the year, and he was very bulky, right? He was, and then kind of like I met him at the end of the academic year, and he lost so much weight. I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Look, what can you do? I'm struggling. I'm struggling. Do I pay the fees? Or do I feed myself, pay the rent?" And it's tough, right? Obviously, that we should not seek the struggles. We should not want to have the struggles, but struggles will come in different forms. And now, alhamdulillah, there are support scholarships that are there. And even I found that even if you provide scholarship, the eagerness is not there. Like money is not the obstacle. Resources really is not obstacle. The obstacle is the obstacles that we put us in front of us. If there is a will, right, there is a way. I remember when because I studied, I studied here first in London, the UK. And I went to go abroad. I went to Syria for a while. It didn't work out, right? I went to this place and that place, right? For some time. It didn't work out. And I began to kind of like, and I didn't have, my father wasn't alive. I didn't have elder brother. My mother was a pensioner, right? The financial support wasn't there. What do I do, right? So, but in the initial, I faced so much obstacles to the point I said to myself, I said to Allah, look, this is probably you don't want me. You don't want me to pursue this path, right? You don't want me to pursue this path. So I went to Jordan. This went to Jordan again. This was back in 2000, right? And again, obstacles, financial obstacles. University, the Islamic university that I wanted to kind of enroll at, it was, giving us, obstacles and troubles, right? And then, I went alone, and where do I stay? The university, they didn't have kind of dorms. Where do I stay? And the first few weeks or month, money was running out. The amount I pay rent and whatnot. And wallahi, in one sense, like it broke me in one sense, because I left my family, left my mother, right? And here is that I wanted to kind of study. I said to Allah, look, I'm not interested in any other thing. I just want to study, right? Just want to study. I had this kind of eagerness and passion to study. And then I faced obstacles. And wallahi, it broke me. And I said to Allah, look, okay, I faced obstacles when I went to Syria. I faced obstacles when I went there. And now I struggled again to travel and I'm facing obstacles. Ya Allah, maybe this is not something that you want me to take. It's probably you want me to take another path. Yeah. And because like university was not admitting me, right? The money was running out. I didn't have a place to stay. Obviously I knew Arabic by then, could converse, but it was still new land with on your own. You know, those folks, you know, the university, they're crazy. Right? They don't make it easy for you, right? And it was really tough, right? Really tough. And I said to myself after I think a month, I said, look, okay, I'm gonna go back to, you know, go back to college, university, and do whatever, and I study what I can. I felt really dejected. Wasn't blaming Allah, right? But I felt really kind of like dejected, right? And I remember, look, I'm gonna one last, you know, kind of push, one last push, right? And I made istikhara. I remember this. Like I made istikhara. I said that Allah, you know, tomorrow I'm gonna go back to the university and, you know, and speak to people and give one last push. And if it doesn't work out, then the following day I had an open ticket, like 1 year open ticket. You go back to the travel agents and just book a date, come back, go back to London and come back to London and do whatever I can, right? You know, I made istikhara, I made dua. The next morning, I thought this was it. I'll just go, you know, but I had that kind of hope still, right? I woke up, went out, went to the university, right? And a brother, like an angel, subhanAllah, right? A brother who was studying from another country, from Kosovo. He was from Kosovo, yeah, or Bosnia, right? He came to me. I was just walking along the corridors of the university, right? So he came to me and said, you know, I heard that you're from London. Yeah. I heard that you were having some difficulties. Well, I heard that you were looking for a place to stay, right? And, and you were finding it difficult to find a place to stay. I said, yeah. He said, look, I might have something. I might have something. I said, okay. He said, we finish university after Dhuhr. Some of the, you know, start about early 8, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and they finish, you know, Dhuhr time, come back, right? Different programs. He said, Dhuhr time, come with me, because the university was just outside the main city, Amman, right? It's about 40 minutes, kind of half an hour to 40 minutes drive. He said, look, we live in Amman, and come after Dhuhr, and you'll meet one of our teachers and see how we can help you, right? So I went, and, you know, I was young then, back then, and I had this, you know, I had a, you know, curtains, hairstyle. I had, remember, Reebok classic Son trainers. It's funny. I had, I think Adidas or Reebok tracksuit bottom, and a shirt or a t-shirt, I can't remember, because it's really hot there, right? So I went, the brother took me to the Sheikh's house, knocked on the door. We knocked on the door for a pause for a while. It's Qaylula time, so he was sleeping. So he, you know, he opened the door. Right. Obviously, the brother, he spoke to the Sheikh about me already. So he opened the door and he said, Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam. You know, what's your name? Where you from? The basic stuff, right? And all he done is like, he looked at my trainers, maybe, and he looked up and down, you know, from my feet to my head. And he said, طيب, inshallah, narak, you know, we'll see. And he closed the door. I'm like, I'm facing that brother. I said, what just happened there, right? You know, why did I meet him? You know, who is he, and and whatnot? And he said, look, don't worry, it's all sorted. So what do you mean? He said, you have a place to stay. You can stay with us. I said, okay, alhamdulillah, because they had like this particular sheikh. He was part of another kind of group, and he had a group of foreign students that he was looking after from America, from Europe, from other countries, right? And I was the only kind of Brit, if you like, right? Because those students, they had scholarships from a certain organization, like an international organization, right? So he said, look, we have this, and we have a number of shuyukh that we go to university. We have a number of shuyukh also who we learn from, we stay with, and we have other program. And wallah, he said, just the other day, a room became vacant because another student went away. So he said, you're lucky, subhanallah. Just 1 or 2 days ago, right? He said, a room became vacant. So I heard about you and I spoke to the sheikh, and he just wanted to see you, right? And you have the room. That was it. I don't know these people, right? I don't know these people, right? And I had a room, a flat, we lived in a shukka with all the students, right? Not only that, brothers and sisters, right? Right. Studying in Jordan is not cheap, expensive, right? And then go into the university, right? The program, but it's still very expensive. Rent, and then food, and then fees and whatnot. And there was still challenges. What do? I didn't have someone who can send money. I didn't have, father passed away. I didn't have elder brother, sister married, and mother pensioner. Where do I get, money from? And subhanallah, right? After a while, after studying and studying at the university, studying with the sheikh, right? He said, look, you don't have to pay rent. Number one, we will bring you in within our kind of cohort. I'll speak to the kind of like the organization. I'm not going to mention the organization, right? It's well known, and see if they could pay some of the fees at least on your behalf, and other things. And he did this, subhanallah, and he accepted me within that group, and we're able to, it makes me emotional, to be honest, right? I got a place to stay with other fellow students from all over the world, and I have so many stories, subhanallah, weird stories, funny stories, right? And partial fees, or some of the fees were paid. Not only that, we would get monthly stipend, right, for our kind of groceries and whatnot, right? Only that we'd go Umrah every year and Hajj, right, with the shuyukh and it was so amazing. The point is that, right, you will face struggles, right? You will face challenges, right? Because Shaitan will put challenges in front of you, and I want to see if you're genuine, if you're sincere, right? Now I see some students, they enroll at Arabic course or a course. After a few weeks, they kind of like give up, right? They want to be entertained. They want to, it's edutainment, right? After, I see students from going from institution to institution, courses to courses, do 1 month here, few weeks there, and whatnot. They don't have the patience, they have the eagerness and whatnot. No, you have to like, if you want Allah to help you, you have to run to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to test your mettle. He will test your mettle, right? So I'm not saying after that my life became easy. No, still obstacles, struggles. But can you imagine? I went blind, right? Didn't know what was happening. Not only that, I was fortunate to study with shuyukh, right, who looked after us, right? Study with fellow, students from all over the world, subhanallah, right? Visit the Haramain, right? In, twice a year sometimes, right? Because from Jordan to, it's very easy to get to, right? The point is that, like when I was there and I thought this was the end, but I still pushed. I said last time, and Allah opened the doors, right? Allah opened the doors. It was like, who is this guy? I didn't know. I don't know, right? Who is this sheikh? Like they could be, they could have been fanatics. They're not. They were not, right? Right. But I trusted Allah, alhamdulillah, and I really felt the dua of my mother. Right. I really felt the dua of my mother. It's really important that you have the support of your family. So Struggles will be there, even in London, studying in London, right? Have the patience, be diligent, right? Have the right intention, right? And Allah will open the doors of barakat for you, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you for listening. And hopefully this reminder, a few points I wanted to share with you was beneficial, inshallah. We have some time. If you have any questions or comments, we'll take, inshallah. Yeah, so my area of interest is psychology. I mean, it's a long discussion, but I believe like the secular psychology and counseling is very problematic. And even kind of what people talk about Islamic psychology can be very problematic. So yeah, I'm researching kind of psychology generally, counseling psychology in particular, different therapy techniques and whatnot. I also teach various different courses. Alhamdulillah. Okay, there's a couple of comments, I think. It can be very difficult to manage everything and sometimes hard to see where we're heading, but having trust in Allah is very important. Really appreciate your sharing experience. Yeah, it is. Look, it's not easy, especially people. I know brothers and sisters who are professional study, have children and trying to juggle all of these things, right? And it's not easy, but persist, be consistent, right? Make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have right niyyah, step by step, right? The scholars say that, right? If you want knowledge overnight, you will lose knowledge overnight. So take it step by step, right? Slowly. It's a lifelong thing. You always study, right? But as I said, I come back, you find mentors. I can't emphasize this, I'm not talking about, by the way, I'm not talking about these social media life coaches and social media influencers. No, don't go near them. Right? I know I'm being very kind of direct and probably harsh, right? I'm not saying all of them, some really good, but no, I'm talking about people who have studied, who have struggled, who want good for you. They don't want, just to say I'm a teacher and I have students. No, right? They don't want to replicate themselves in you. No, they want to help you, empower you, make you excel in whatever you want to do, give you the tools, give you the right direction, right advice. There are people like that. Find them. Not, people who are going to social media. I'm not saying everyone who goes I'm on social media, right? I'm saying it's subjective what I'm saying, but find people who went through a program, went through these struggles, and you will, inshallah, succeed. These type of sessions or webinars are really important. I think they're important because, in anything in life, we need kind of guidance, right? We need mentorship. We need people who have, even in marriage, for example, marriage, right? You go to speak to people who are already married, right? So they can advise how to go about getting married. Knowledge similar, right? You don't go to people, and there are people who are like that, who are not married themselves, they advise on marriage. Who are not married themselves, and they try to get other people married. I'm not saying that's a red flag. What I would say is that, okay, no, you should yourself be married so you can advise on marriage. It doesn't mean that there are people who are not married, they can give better marriage advice than some people who are married, right? But it's always better to get advice from people who have relevant experience. And experience does not come with time all the time. Meaning some person can be 50 or 60, but may not have the relevant experience that you need, right? But some people can have, 10 years, but have all the experience and know-how that you need. So, with age, experience that is not always, they don't always correlate. You have to have the right experience, inshallah. Okay, brothers and sisters, barakallahu feekum. Thank you for joining. Thank you for taking part, and hopefully there's some thoughts that came to my mind. So there are articles online you can go through, inshallah. So just to summarize again: intention, hard work, love for learning, knowledge, right? The reason why I focus on psychology, number of reasons. One of the reasons because I look at what the Quran and Sunnah says about generally psychology, right? Hard work, right? And one of the most important principle is have a murshid, have a guide, have a mentor who has gone through the experience and wants good for you, right? Wants good for you, right? Is sincere, right? Is not there to kind of just become a social media influencer. Is there to really help because it understands that helping people is the sunnah of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The most beneficial the most beneficial are those who benefit others. The best Muslim are those who benefit others, right? We have a question. If wanting to study Alimiya, however, as a female mother doing it part-time, it's hard to find an institute that all teachers teach well or are expert in their field. Is it okay to study at different places? A very good question. My suggestion would be that you find an institution that has a good program, right? And have teachers who can teach those subjects. Because each kind of institution, they will have a curriculum, a kind of a syllabus, a methodology approach that they take, right? And that may differ from college or institution to institution. My advice is that you stick with one, right? And you kind of like branch out to others. Otherwise, it can become confusing. Right? It can become confusing. And there are many institutions that are in London even who teach kind of Alimiya part-time even. And those Alimiya programs, they're good, right? But we shouldn't assume that will become mujtahids after. Right? We have to study, continue to study. But these programs are good, gives you a good foundation, gives you knowledge that you can actually impart to others, right? But there's a story. I think it was between Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam al-Azam, and one of his students. I think it was Abu Yusuf, or was it Muhammad Hassan Shaybani? I forget. That began to study with Imam Abu Hanifa, and then it was probably early years of his study with Imam Abu Hanifa, and then he began to give fatwa or kind of began to teach. Imam Abu Hanifa heard about this, and the news came, and he said, he wants to give something like he wants to kind of give the fruits before the fruit has ripened. And like take it slowly, right? Take it slowly. Be patient in your studies and imparting that knowledge that you have, right? Be patient, inshallah. Okay, we'll end it here, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.